This is the Analysing Anfield podcast on the Blood Red channel, bringing you the best tactical and statistical analysis of Liverpool FC.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. This, I suppose, is more of a Christmas special than the last Christmas special that we recorded a week ago, because I'm in on my day off, and Dave, I think you're working, are you?
Yeah, technically I'm working, so it's not as bad for me.
Yeah, roles reversed from last year. I think you did the honours last year.
Yeah.
But I think we've got quite a bit to get through, which is the reason why we're checking in. That's kind of what this episode, I suppose, is going to be. It might be shorter, we don't really know, but it is just kind of going to be a checking in type thing, touching base, looking back at what's happened and looking ahead to Newcastle and Southampton. Since we last recorded, I think we have played 3 times. I think Liverpool played 3 times, and we've got obviously 2 games to come before we will next be recording the podcast. Before we get into it, and Dave, do you have a good Christmas?
I did, mate. Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. Obviously, I know it's a different one for most people this year, but from a personal point of view, it wasn't too bad. Yeah, all right. How about yourself?
Yeah, it was good, mate. Yeah. Funnily enough, I might as well mention it. Christmas shopping, day before Christmas Eve, and a regular listener stopped me in the middle of the city centre and said, just praise the podcast. So if you're listening today, thanks for that. Yeah, it meant a lot. But we'll move on anyway. So we can't look past, even though it feels like a while ago, Crystal Palace. 7-0 win. I doubt it was what we predicted. But I think one thing I want to touch on with the game was I think that this is the kind of game that can often make expected goals look a bit stupid, because I think a lot of people look at expected goals and think that it's in place to predict the outcome of a match, and I always get frustrated when that's the case, because that's not what it's there for. If Liverpool on the day posted an expected goals according to StatsBomb of 2.2 and Liverpool scored 7, that makes it look stupid. But really, Dave, what is it that's telling us?
Yeah, well, we have talked about this before, where for a really good example is Fulham. The Fulham game, which Liverpool only scored once, they finished the match with an expected goals of 2.1. So you're saying it was 2.2 for Palace. So I mean, that's a decent accumulation in terms of XG. It says that there was a fair few high quality chances created, but when you have elite level forwards like Liverpool do, when they're really on it like they were at Palace, you can go and score 5, 6, 7 goals. It's just it doesn't always play out like that, but it's basically an indication of how Liverpool's forwards can kind of just come alive and really, go on and score a bag full of goals. As I said, it wasn't too dissimilar to the chance created against Fulham. They just maybe weren't as clinical in that game. But we talked about this before. I think Atalanta was another similar example where, when they're really on it, you convert at a much better rate, and that's what happened at Palace. It was just in the final third. It was really clinical.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, accumulating 2.2 expected goals, most of the time when you accumulate that much, you'll probably win the game unless you've had a tricky defensive performance on the opposite side. And what that simply means is, based on the shots that Liverpool posted on the day, the average player, a team full of average players would probably score about 2 goals based on the shots Liverpool took. The fact that Liverpool managed to bag 7 just suggests that, the actual finishing on the day was just far and above what you'd expect the average player to post. Salah finishing from outside the box, Henderson finishing from outside the box. I think there was a header in there. Headers generally weighted quite low because they tend to get scored less frequently. I think Firmino's lob over the keeper with his weaker foot from the left, I think that was a bit of an awkward angle. So that's probably getting weighted quite low. But Liverpool's finishing on the day was just outstanding, and that's one of the reasons why Liverpool have scored, in a way, 5 goals more than expected goals is expecting to. Another really good game that comes to mind was Bayern Munich and Spurs. I think that one finished 7-2, didn't it, when Pochettino was in charge? And I think Bayern's XG was only around 2. But anyone who watched that game, Bayern's finishing on the day was just ridiculous. Serge Gnabry, I think, scored a hat-trick. And this is what the perks of having above average quality players. This is why I tend to say quite frequently you're only as good as your players, because I'm not sure how many Liverpool would have scored on the day if you presented exactly the same shots that Liverpool generated to Palace players. If Palace as a team had have taken the shots Liverpool have took on the day, they probably wouldn't have scored 7, would they?
No, I mean, what was? Oh yeah, they had next to no real kind of threat on the day, did they? But you are right. It was just, it was a really good performance, and it was just made that bit more of a kind of blockbuster headline by how many goals were converted. But if you kind of think about that game as well, it looked to be a tricky one, didn't it? Especially with which we actually haven't spoke about. We didn't speak about the Spurs game, did we? Obviously, no. I think that was just a few days earlier. That was I thought a really tight game. I know Liverpool dominated in terms of possession and had more shots, but I think it was a game that felt on the knife edge for the full 90 minutes, and I thought Liverpool did really well to win it, to be honest, because for me it could have quite easily finished a draw. That might have been a fairly fair result. So to come away with all 3 points, it felt huge. But then you've got to go from that really big high to then go into a tricky game, early kickoff, and to end up winning it 7-0 just felt like a huge kind of statement. I know it hasn't quite played out like that since, but yeah, it was a really good win.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool had 7 shots on target, and every shot found the net. And usually, if I hadn't seen the game, I would probably immediately think, okay, how did the goalkeeper get on? But in that display, I couldn't possibly look at Guaita and think he should be doing better. It was just one of them expert finishing displays that just puts the game completely beyond doubt. According to the XG, as I said, it's probably a 2-0 win, which is along the lines roughly of what we predicted. I think maybe I might have said 2-1. Can't remember what you said, Dave.
No, I can't.
But the 7-0 thing, just kind of come out of nowhere. But
it's a reminder that you can't predict football, isn't it? Really, we like to do predictions, but it's so difficult because madness like that can come out from it.
Yeah, especially this season. This season I'm finding it more tricky than usual to predict what's going to happen in a game. And I think that probably takes us on to the next point, which is, although Liverpool have posted, a 7-0 win against Palace, a 2-1 win over Spurs, that inconsistency remains, and it's not just Liverpool, it's the whole of the league. Before Liverpool beat Spurs, there was a 1-1 draw with Fulham. There was a 1-1 draw with Midtjylland. There was 2 weeks later, a 1-1 draw with Brighton. And Sam Allardyce comes to town and a 1-1 draw with West Brom. It's a strange one. I think it's going to be one of them seasons. I think it's going to keep happening to every team. And I think as Liverpool supporters, looking at the past 2 seasons, we expect wins relentlessly all the time. We don't expect sloppy points to be dropped. But it's looking like it's just going to be one of those seasons where that will happen to every team every few weeks. And you've just got to make sure that they don't turn into losses, while also making sure that they happen less frequently than the rivals around you, really.
Yeah, I think what's happened is, we know there's mitigating factors this year, but what we're kind of seeing a return to is a traditional campaign from a title pursuing team. City come along and kind of changed, moved the goalposts a little bit in terms of pushing for these 100 points targets and achieving it. Liverpool then stepped up and went toe to toe with them in that regard, and we had that 18-19 season where both teams just were winning relentlessly week in, week out, and the title was basically decided in the head-to-heads, wasn't it? Liverpool kept that up last year where City dropped off, but now you're kind of seeing it revert to what it's kind of been for most of the Premier League era. Because if you look at Liverpool's Premier League results so far, they've played 15 matches. They've still only lost just once, that 7-2 game to Villa. And okay, there's been more draws. Obviously, there's been 5 there. But if you look at that record of 9 wins, 5 draws, and just 1 loss, you would still associate that with a title chasing team from maybe 4 years ago. It's just, it feels like we've been in a different era for the last few years, and maybe the pandemic and things and the hectic schedule is just, I don't know, it's just even the playing field a little bit again, and kind of given lesser sides a bit more of an advantage, and the top teams a disadvantage. And that's why, because teams are playing so often at the top, that it's just impossible almost to maintain these kind of high standards every couple of days that we were seeing last year and the year before.
Yeah, I think in previous seasons as well, Liverpool have generally had a really good hold over the random events side of football. Those random events being the things outside of just your general performance, the things outside of open play, really, when both teams are just playing football against each other, such as, luck, refereeing decisions, the stadium, the atmosphere in the stadium, penalties, VAR's massive now, set pieces as well. And I think if you look at Liverpool's dropped points, obviously against West Brom, we definitely deserved to get done, because we stopped playing. But I'm pretty sure that was getting done by a set piece, which mightn't have happened if, say, for example, Van Dijk was fit. Against Fulham, we did get battered in the first early moments, so that was a deserved 1-1. Against Brighton, although we didn't maybe deserve the 3 points, we got done by a late penalty decision, VAR, which probably was harsh at the time. So there's those things in the season, but I do think that Liverpool have been a little bit more up and down week to week performance-wise as well than in the past. Liverpool have been quite machine-like in the past few seasons. And I think if you look at the second half against West Brom, the first half against Fulham, the whole game against Brighton, you could argue the second half against Manchester City, although that's easier said than done. Just certain little moments where Liverpool maybe haven't really turned up, and it seems to have, some of them seem to have coincided with Liverpool being given more of a break, weirdly. And I think maybe Liverpool could do with that kind of that relentless, no change in schedule, just playing the same team every week sort of thing for a long period of time, because we usually do quite well when that's the case. Liverpool tends to do quite well after the early international breaks are over with, for example. Tends to go on quite a run then.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I think the start of the season overall in the whole league has been just quite inconsistent. Every team seems to be struggling to really run away with it. Including Liverpool, really, and it's a difficult one to analyse, really.
Yeah, it's I do wonder how much the kind of mental fatigue is playing a factor. We'll probably talk about the intricacies of maybe the performance, I don't know, shortly. But if you have a look that they've played, of the current bottom 5, Liverpool played 4 of them, and they've only won 1 against Sheffield United, which is quickly becoming almost a buy, isn't it? A given, automatic 3 points the way they are at the moment. But then it's West Brom 1-1, Fulham 1-1, and Brighton 1-1. But it's sandwiched in between these games, you've got a victory against Tottenham, a commanding victory against Wolves, a good win against Leicester, a tight win against West Ham. It seems that the victories against the top sides are still there. It's like that when they need to find that extra gear, or that that level that they've had in previous seasons, it's still there. But I just wonder whether, when that motivation's a little bit less, you're playing a team that you should beat on paper, it should be a routine victory, whether I'm not leveling any accusations at the Liverpool players. I'm not calling them lazy or anything. I think it's more, just the drain of playing like they are at the moment. I just wonder when it hasn't got that extra, almost competitive edge in the game, if it's too easy a little bit to start running through the motions, expecting it just to happen, and then it doesn't. I thought West Brom was that. I thought West Brom, it looked a little bit lethargic at times. I thought there wasn't the same creativity that you see in other games. And I appreciate it was difficult. It was 11 men behind the ball, sitting in a really deep block, plenty of players in the penalty area, almost no options through the middle. It was going out wide, and that suited West Brom crosses into the box. So I appreciate all this, but I just think over the last few weeks there's a theme of dropping points in those particular games while still being able to produce and secure wins against tougher opponents.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I think out of all the games I've seen Liverpool play, and that's quite a lot, I think specifically the first half against West Brom, it's probably the least competitive half I've ever seen in terms of an opposing team coming and just almost refusing to compete. And it was very much like Liverpool just playing with the ball. It was kind of like, when you play like a six-a-side and one team is about 7 goals up and the other team just kind of stops, just gives up almost. It was a bit like that. And I do think it almost got too easy. Like I think a few seasons ago, City went to Newcastle, St James's Park, and he went 1-0 up. It was around maybe the 65th minute, and it was just too easy to the extent that City just kind of stopped playing. And Newcastle went up the opposite end immediately and scored 2. And I think they beat them 2-1.
Yeah, I remember that game, yeah.
Yeah, but I watched the game, and it was just so easy for City for an hour that they genuinely just stopped caring. And then before they knew it, they were behind. And, that can happen in Premier League football, but just to capture the difference between the two teams on the day, West Brom posted a total of 142 completed passes. Jordan Henderson on his own, 141. So on his own, one fewer pass than West Brom as a team. But he comes away with a point. So it's a tricky one to. Obviously the media was over the moon with it and all that sort of stuff. Allardyce is back and all this. I don't think there's any secret Anfield formula, by the way, that he's got. I just think it was one of them where, I don't know, once Liverpool kind of went a goal up, we just kind of let the game drift a little bit. And
I like the reaction, by the way, Josh, just quickly on that point of the kind of Liverpool camp, Klopp, and I think Robertson did some post-match as well, where there was like an admission and acceptance of internal fault, rather than kind of being like, blaming West Brom the way they played. There was like an acceptance of, well, this is how they were going to do it. This is how Allardyce is going to set up, and we take responsibility for not taking the 3 points. Because I think doing that is good, because then you feel like you've got something to fix in the next game. You've got something to put right, as opposed to blaming other factors. It was kind of an acceptance of, this is what we knew already. We've planned for this and we didn't overcome it. That's on us, and it's something we're gonna work on. I just think it's a good way to approach it.
Yeah, that's something I'm big on personally. I don't think you should make excuses. I think it's very lazy, very, very much of a cop out if you start looking at referee indecisions or blaming their style of play or whatever. I think it might have been Klopp or Peter Kravitz who said a while back that something like a loss isn't really a loss if it provides you with a lesson to learn from. And I think this could very much act as a bit of a wake up call, really, that even against the worst teams in the league, you can't switch off at any minute, otherwise you will get punished. And we end up dropping 2 points at home to a team that's probably going to get relegated, in my opinion. But what does this mean then for the title race? How's the title race looking at the minute? It's a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, I sent a newsletter out a few weeks ago, and I labelled it the 4-horse race. and it was supposed to have a question mark on the end. it was supposed to be a question, but I didn't send out a newsletter anyway. Someone else pressed the send button, so they named it wrong. But it's because that at the time that was what it was looking like. But I think Man United have since come into the fray a little bit. Maybe now it's a 5-horse race. Maybe you could argue Chelsea have dropped out of it. Arguably Spurs as well. But I don't know. I mean, has it been the case of maybe people overthinking it, people getting ahead of themselves, and it's still just Liverpool and City, or is there more to it than that?
It's tough because I think this season, you mentioned it at the top of the show, this season is so difficult to predict. I must say, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a shame that it's under the circumstances that it is. There does seem to be this lingering cloud in the background, obviously to do with the pandemic and a lack of fans and those kind of things. And I think that predominantly from a Liverpool camp, I imagine it's maybe not as enjoyable because last year it was just winning every week and marching towards the title. But maybe just from a football fan perspective, I think it's really competitive this year. Like anybody can beat anyone. The game seems to be quite enjoyable, and you couldn't call the top 6 at the moment, in my opinion. In terms of the title, I still do think it's Liverpool, just because they've suffered a lot with injuries, as we know. It's already been discussed a million times, but to still kind of be top of the pile despite that is good. I think City will come strong. I think with something important to talk about with City, Josh, is a lot of people have been unimpressed by them. Ourselves included. We talked about it separately. But I have noticed that they've really fine-tuned that defence. I saw through the week that they've got the most competitive clean sheets this season of any team in the top 5 leagues, which I thought was quite impressive. And the underlying numbers aren't bad either to kind of reaffirm that. So it feels like, to me now, looking back, Guardiola's probably said in the summer, we've lost the title last season because of the defence. That was our weakest issue. We need to reinforce it and we need to get better defensively. And they have done. They're much more difficult to score against. Obviously, the negative consequence of that is the attack looks like it's not a patch of what it's been in seasons gone by. But I do expect that to start getting a little bit better as the season progresses. And I do think they'll be right up there again. I think it wouldn't surprise me if they hit one of these City strides where they just go and win like 12 games on the run. So I think it's Liverpool, City, and then you've got outsiders then like United, maybe Chelsea will come back. Tottenham might be up there. I don't dare say Everton, but no, I think then you're looking at like your Everton, Leicester's for pushing maybe a top 4 place or top 6.
Yeah, I would agree that I think Liverpool's still the strongest. I think Liverpool's still the favourite. It's still Liverpool to lose. Obviously, the injuries that's happened, and we're still top. I think by maybe 3 points over the nearest team. And if you look at the expected goals as well, if you consider expected goals for minus expected goals against per 90, Liverpool's expected goal difference per match is just the best in the league, marginally ahead of City, and then funny enough Aston Villa, and then Chelsea, and then there's quite a gap then to 5th, 6th, 7th, and that comprises of Brighton, funnily enough, Manchester United, Leicester. Yeah.
Just quickly, is this per 90 or combined? XG?
This is per 90.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I was going to say...
This is XG difference.
Difference, okay, yeah. I just think just on Villa, they're just a strange one, aren't they, this year, because the numbers are just really good. And even normally when it's like combined numbers, they're right up there, and they've played like 2 games less.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the numbers yesterday before they faced Chelsea. In fact, it's still the case, actually, that they're shooting more than any other team per match. Currently posting 15.9 shots per game. That's ahead of City in 2nd place on 15.2, and Liverpool virtually joint 2nd place on 15.2 as well. So Villa couldn't be shooting more than any other team. I think the thing with Villa is, and the likes of Brighton there and things like that, the XG difference captures the level of performance of a team to an extent, but it doesn't really consider player quality. So whereas Brighton are posting roughly the same XG difference per match as Manchester United have just got better players. So they're putting the ball in the net and maybe stopping the ball from going in the net when the shots do materialise. Whereas Brighton, the opposite's happening. I think Matt Ryan's having a bad season. And I think on the attacking side, Danny Welbeck, Neil Maupay, and then the 4,000 number 10s that they've got just aren't putting the ball in the back of the net. But yeah, I think in terms of the title race, are we sticking with our top 4 calls? I think we did that quite recently, didn't we?
You have to remind me. Can you remember?
I can't overly remember, but I don't think either of us had Manchester United in there.
Okay, that's interesting because I watched United last week and on the weekend actually, but I watched them against Everton in the League Cup quarter final, and bearing in mind both teams are really close to each other in the table, I just thought United with the players they've got just looked the next level. And I do think, it's United is strange because they get a lot of stick, but and I'm not maybe tipping them for the title, but I do expect them to be now. If you're asking me now, maybe like a top 3, top 4 side. So,
I think with United, they have got goals. I'll give them that, and they've got options as well. Like, which almost no other team in the league around the hour mark can bring on Edison Cavani, Paul Pogba, and Donny van der Beek. They're 3 serious substitutes. Them you can't really knock that. They can change games. And obviously they've already got Bruno in there, who's an absolute output merchant.
Yes.
You've got Rashford, you've got Martial, you've got Greenwood. So when it comes to finding the net, they have got answers in there. I think both fullbacks are terrible, must be honest. I think the 2 fullbacks are awful on the attacking side of the game. They really offer virtually nothing. But I think they have got solutions in the team when it comes to finding goals. And I think if you look at Spurs, for example, one massive issue with Spurs is if Kane or Son don't find the net, Spurs probably aren't going to. They've got kind of 2 avenues to goals, really, and that's kind of it. So I think was it you who mentioned once that the number of goals that a team scores tends to equal the same number of points that they accumulate over the season? Is that you or?
Yeah. Basically, just a fair few statistical kind of analysis have worked out that roughly a goal tends to equate to a point over the course of a campaign. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at last season for that, Liverpool are overperformers, but if you look at City are the opposite. But I think Man United scored 66, finished on 66 points.
Yeah.
Chelsea scored 69, finished on 66 points. Spurs scored 61, finished on 59 points. So I think there's kind of a correlation there.
Yeah.
And
was that one, wasn't it? That ironically when Liverpool tweeted out about the run of 64 league games unbeaten, they'd scored 169 goals in that time and they'd accumulated 170 points. It is linked, and if you look at all the points accumulated in the Premier League and then look how many goals were scored in that campaign, they're normally very close to each other.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the teams in the league, I think the 4 teams with goals in abundance are probably Liverpool, City, Chelsea, and United. But then you have to obviously factor in the ability of Spurs to gain a lead and sit on it, which they have been capable of doing, not so much recently. But I suppose what we're getting at is, despite everything that's happening, I think we both would still value Liverpool as the favourites. I'd still pump my money on Liverpool. I just don't feel City for some reason just don't seem as ruthless at the minute. To me, I've got a bit of a theory on this. They look a little bit like Guardiola's focusing all of his energy on getting his team able to control a match with a view to maybe in the summer or even in January, adding an absolute output merchant, risk-taking player who's going to just, with everything else staying the same, who's going to single-handedly move the attack up a level. Say, for example, a Lionel Messi or a Erling Haaland. I think they've been linked with possibly an Aguero, but obviously Aguero's not been playing. But he seems really, really intent on getting control over matches without really winning every match and without really attacking relentlessly. And I just feel like maybe he's planning on getting prepared for this, special player that City are trying to get in or something. Not just complete guess, but
I think Haaland would be. I actually wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like the laziest piece I've ever put together, but it wasn't. I did try and make that point, but I just think Haaland would be the absolute best signing for City, because you can't really rely on Aguero anymore, and he's only going to start slowing down even more with age. I think Jesus is just. If you look at his time in the Premier League, I think he's underperformed by about 15 goals in terms of his XG, which for an elite striker at the top, If you go on Understat, you might be able to see it now.
You're right. Yeah, he has.
How many is it exactly?
15.2 goals. That's bad, that.
Isn't it? For an elite striker to underperform that, it's just not good enough. And I think, if they just brought in a goal machine like Haaland, who possesses so much, even if he costs upwards of 100 million, he's an investment for 10 years. I think he could just completely transform them. I know he could transform most attacks, but I think them specifically, he'd be huge for them. Whether it's going to happen, I don't know, but I do agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, it's one to kick my hand anyway, but I just thought it was probably quite relevant to have a little recap, considering how busy the schedule is and the inconsistency and stuff like that. And obviously the fact that we haven't had a podcast. So yeah, we'll move on anyway to who Liverpool have got on. I'm getting mixed up with the days. Is it Wednesday night we play?
What day are we now? Yeah, it is. It's Newcastle away on the 30th, yeah.
So we'll touch on it slightly because we assume most people will probably watch Liverpool play this game before they listen to this podcast. Complete guess, but Newcastle United, same old.
Yeah.
Same old, really, isn't it? It's a little bit of a mini results machine at times in terms of getting over the line and stuff. But performance-wise, awful.
Yeah, pretty much for the entirety of Bruce's time, the underlying metrics have just been really bad. And I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, it's been a source of bemusement that they've continued to pick up results because they look, one of, if not the worst side in the Premier League. And yet they've kind of comfortably avoided relegation last season, haven't they? And they're still not really in that kind of bottom 2-3 at the moment. Somehow.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers behind their season. So in terms of what I mentioned before, expected goals difference, they're actually not doing that bad, but that is because they have benefited from a fair few penalties. Their expected goals per match, excluding penalties, is better than only West Brom. West Brom's is actually shocking, really bad. And then on the defensive side of the game, Newcastle's expected goals against per match, excluding penalties, is the 2019, 18, 17, 16th, the half of that. Obviously, they benefit there from soaking pressure with a back five and a midfield four, usually. And they don't really commit many bodies forward. The keeper tends to overperform, which is probably because there's so many people putting pressure on the shooter at times that it probably makes it easy for the goalkeeper to save, doesn't it? But yeah, they're very much what they have been under Bruce. They're a counter-attacking team that a lot of the time doesn't counter-attack.
No.
And Bruce comes up with plenty of excuses and stuff like that, and plenty of a lot of the time he says things along the lines of, "I can't fault the players' effort" and things like that. But at the end of the day, they're not performing anywhere near to a level to stay in the Premier League, in my opinion. And they didn't last season either.
No, I had it there. If you look at the team that lined up in against City, and you kind of see that as maybe a shadow team for what we're going to see against Liverpool, given it's similar opposition. You just don't know where the threat's going to come from. They've got a back five. Then you've got Almiron, who does have something. Then you got Longstaff, Hayden, not much there. Murphy, and then Joe Linton up top as a lone forward. From a Liverpool perspective, there's not much there that gives you much fear, is there?
No, but I will say that in the past few years they've got the recruitment generally quite right in terms of the style of play. Like they've got players in who are quick, good on the break, can carry the ball, don't really need teammates around them to get up the field. Players like Saint Maximin, Almiron, Ryan Fraser's in the same mould. Callum Wilson, you could argue as well. Obviously got Joe Linton wrong because you don't really seem to know how to use him, to be honest. But I don't think he's been that great anyway. But I think generally they're just they're a frustrating team because they seem to me a bit like a sleeping giant. But their ambition seems so low. Just stay in the Premier League and that's kind of it. Job done.
Yeah. Well, I think the fans would obviously like more, but I think one of the main issues they've got, not just as a starting 11 or team, just as a club, there's just a complete lack of alignment from top to bottom, isn't there? The owners are. I think it's still Ashley. He's trying to sell the club as being for a while. There's been failed takeovers. Newcastle fans basically hate him and basically don't like the team either. Not really a fan of the manager. You get the impression the relationship between the manager and the owner isn't that good. There's just a complete lack of alignment there, and they're just in a really. They're already not a great ranked club, and they're in a pretty bad moment as well. So it feels like a really good time to be playing them.
Yeah, I mean at the minute, all competitions they have lost the past three, and past four matches they've lost 3 and drawn 1. That's against Leeds, Fulham, Brentford, and City, and they've scored 3 goals in that time and conceded 9. I think there's an outside chance here that Liverpool use 4-2-3-1. We had Shaqiri on the bench for the last game, although we kind of got to a point where we needed him against West Brom. We didn't use him for whatever reason, but I think we've lined up 4-2-3-1 in the past against Newcastle. I think we might have done it at St James's Park as well. I recall Shaqiri putting the ball in when Liverpool scored the winning goal when they were going for the league. I think Origi might have scored it.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But I think we might line up with a 4-2-3-1 just with Shaqiri on the right, Mane on the left, Firmino as the 10 and Salah as the 9. Just an outside goal, depends on how fit Shaqiri is, but it is something that we tend to do against back fives. Obviously, the emphasis is going to be on us to attack. Newcastle is just going to sit in, aren't they? It's kind of one of those that it's difficult to really add value to a preview with this one because they are just what they are. Newcastle, you know exactly what to expect. The man on the street knows what to expect. With this kind of match, it's just going to be on Liverpool to keep coming with wave after wave of attack, be unpredictable on the ball, and you could argue that if you manage set pieces and counter attacks, you're probably not going to concede. So it's one of those. There's not really much to add, really, is there, Dave?
No, that's it. Yeah, it's try and provide information that probably everybody already knows. It should be a game that Liverpool win quite comfortably, I think. As I said, it's a really good time to be playing them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll move on to Southampton, but just before we do, a quick prediction on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3-0, fairly comfortable afternoon.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go the same. I think, obviously, Newcastle playing virtually every 3 days now. I don't think they're a team that's used to that. They're out of form, and against the Liverpool team that should want to react. It's a very similar match setup, you could argue, to what we just faced against West Brom. I know we didn't beat West Brom, but it's going to be really similar. You could argue that Klopp would just kind of send his team out and say, go and do exactly the same again, what he did in the first half, but do it for the second half this time as well.
Yeah.
But after that game, we've got Southampton in what could be a trickier matchup. Looking at the numbers though, Dave, I expected better, to be honest. The numbers are quite, well, slightly below mid-table, I think. I thought there'd be a bit better, a bit of a better performance team than that, according to the numbers. I think they are, but maybe the numbers doesn't capture it.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, they're weirdly they're a tough team because they're a very intense side. But I also think they are a team that it's a winnable fixture, if that makes sense. It's a team that kind of, if you're at your best, I think you can beat them. It's just if you're not at your best, I think they can make it really difficult for you. You know, they have some good players. You know, I think the constant threat from set pieces with Ward-Prowse, and I think the defense has been pretty good this year. You know, I think Vestergaard's shown himself to be a good player, though obviously he's injured now, isn't he? But yeah, that's the best way to probably summarise them. They're a really intense side. You know, they're a tough opponent, but if you're at your best, you can beat them.
Yeah, I will say that. I think not many people will have picked up on how much they've lost by losing Vestergaard and Danny Ings at the same time. I think they both add quite a bit to Southampton's attacking game. Vestergaard plays kind of passes in the mould of Van Dijk in a way. Those cross-field diagonals, and it kind of gets Southampton into the final third with one pass. It's a way of escaping a press, and obviously from those set pieces that James Ward-Prowse is putting in, Vestergaard's obviously, I think he's about 6'6", really good in the air. So you've removed Vestergaard, and I'm not exactly sure who he's been replaced with. Have you any idea on that one?
Yeah, I think it was. I think they've had Stevens and Bednarek in there as well.
Yeah, well, Stevens is nowhere near Vestergaard's level.
Yeah,
I think Bednarek's been in all season, hasn't he?
Yeah, basically what you're losing, just on that point, Josh, what you're basically losing, aren't you, is kind of elite level players in probably two of the most important positions, aren't you? You know, in both boxes, really. You're losing like elite level players, and you know, you haven't no longer got that elite level finisher, and you haven't really got that kind of top class defender either. So it's killing you really in two boxes.
Yeah, but they both offer big perks to Southampton alongside being, you know, better in quality than the options they've got, like the long passes Vestergaard does, the big set piece threat, the finishing that Danny Ings offers, the link up that Danny Ings offers. So, you know, without those players, I'm not sure. I don't think Vestergaard's going to be fit, but I'm not sure on Danny Ings. I'm not sure how bad Danny Ings is. But I think without those two, I don't think it'll be, you know, the Southampton team that many people would expect to give Liverpool a game. If you like, I think Liverpool should find it a lot easier without those two players in the team. But just to put a bit of perspective on their numbers for the season. So in attack, expected goals, excluding penalties, they are about 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13th. And then on the defensive side, they are top 10 on the defensive side. Very aggressive on the ball, obviously. Without the ball. And in terms of shooting, I think this was probably what surprised me a little bit more. I think for the shooting, they shoot less frequently than Arsenal. And anyone that's followed this show for a while will know that that's terrible. Arsenal just don't tend to have shots, do they?
No.
They only shoot more frequently than Sheffield United, West Brom, Newcastle, Burnley and Palace. Those are the 5 teams in the league, really, aren't they, that you'd label as really defensive English teams almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fact that Southampton are only above them, I was a little bit surprised by.
Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't bode well, really, does it? It doesn't look good on them, that. I know obviously playing style comes into that a little bit, but yeah, a little bit surprised by that, actually.
But on the defensive side, though, they only face 9.9 shots per match, which is the 5th best. So they are out shooting their opponents by only about a shot per match. And they do seem better without the ball than with it. Probably one of them teams that you need to gain a lead over, and then you can I think City did that a few weeks ago. But getting that first goal can be tough. But I think Liverpool probably do have enough to win this game for me.
Yeah, it's funny. Southampton's just looking now. They've scored the opening goal 10 of their 15 matches so far, and they've been leading at half time in 8. So yeah, no, it's and I mean, I'm got probably won't have time now while we're recording live to find out what the record is after scoring first. But yeah, it's not bad, that, really, is it? Because it goes without saying that when you score first, you give yourself the huge advantage and normally go on to kind of win the game.
Yeah, I mean, they're currently 9th in the table. I think at the end of the season, I'd probably expect them to finish around there. That's probably a good place for them, because their attack seems to be 10 to 20th, but the defence seems to be 10 to 1st. So placing them 9th is probably quite accurate. Yeah, it would have been handy to have Van Dijk for this one, considering the press that Southampton are probably going to give high up the field. Van Dijk would have been a way out of that. But I think, verdicts on this one, Dave?
This is a tough game to call at this stage, I think. I think I would have had a better feel for it, if it was like the day before. I'm actually going to go with a 1-1 on this one. Sounds a bit pessimistic. Yeah, it sounds a bit pessimistic, but I just think it could. The way Liverpool have been away from home recently, they haven't been able to always turn these kind of performances into victories, and I think this could be a little bit of a frustrating one that maybe just continues this trend of 1-1s.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a break from Wednesday to Monday. Monday night game it is. Yeah, it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one to call. I think I'm going to go 2-1 Liverpool. But I know what you mean in terms of it being. I can picture it being quite niggly. Stepping on Liverpool's toes and that sort of stuff. Really aggressive side without the ball, making it difficult. And I think the past few times we went to St. Mary's, I'm pretty sure it's required kind of a bit of a moment of brilliance, really, to put the ball in the net. Like, I remember Salah carrying the ball from one end of the field to the other, and then firing the corner. I think Mane did similar last season after a bad start. I think he just out of nowhere put the ball in the far corner from the opposite corner of the box, I think. Might be getting mixed up there, but
no, I think there was. I think there was the good Firmino goal as well in one of those games.
Yeah, there might have been. Yeah,
I mean, the record's quite good there. Just quickly, it's the last 3 visits I've ended up in wins, but let's have a look at the. Yeah, I think that 3-1 game that you're talking about where Salah scores that great goal. I think it come really late on, didn't it? Yeah, 80th minute, and then Henderson scores one, mate. But yeah, it hasn't always been easy. And the last year's was 2-1, which is again quite tight. So yeah, it's probably going to be one of them where it's tight and we'll probably end in a draw, or maybe Liverpool coming away with it.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't rule out 1-1. I'm gonna lean on you there for that one. I think I'm gonna go 2-1.
Yeah.
Just because I do think Liverpool, if they turn up, will have enough. But it's difficult at the minute because not the same Liverpool team isn't turning up every week. So it's difficult to predict. But anyway, that is the Christmas check-in, the Christmas update. So we'll be back next week to preview none other than Manchester United, the first meeting of the season, and it's all the way in January. So thanks for joining us, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. That'll be our first show of 2021, that, Josh.
Yeah, it will. Start off with a bang. Yeah, have a good new year to the listeners and stuff, and see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.